For someone who was very talkative and very engaged, he was just a little more quiet, and when the family would get together, he would kind of just melt a little bit.
He was the man who couldn't be killed. He walked barefoot over broken glass in Naka Plaza. He saved the world from an asteroid the size of Texas. He traveled through time to save his future self. For nearly 40 years, Bruce Willis defined what it meant to be the American tough guy, the smirk, the confidence, the voice that could cut through concrete. He was the loudest, most charismatic presence in Hollywood. But today, the silence surrounding him is deafening. The action hero we thought was invincible is fighting a battle that no amount of firepower can win. And the reality of his situation is far darker and more heartbreaking than the headlines have let on. If you looked at Bruce Willis's career over the last 5 years, you probably noticed something strange. It wasn't just a decline, it was a cliff. Suddenly, the star of Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense was churning out dozens of direct-to-video action movies that most people didn't even know existed. The internet was ruthless. Movie fans mocked him. Critics tore him apart. They called him lazy. They called him a sellout. They accused him of sleepwalking through roles just to cash a paycheck. The memes were everywhere. Bruce looking bored, Bruce looking confused, Bruce looking like he would rather be anywhere else. But we were wrong. We were all wrong. While the world was laughing at the lazy actor, a terrifying tragedy was unfolding behind the scenes. Bruce wasn't bored. He wasn't checking out. He was losing his mind, piece by piece, in real time. And the people around him, his family, his agents, and the producers were engaged in a frantic, heartbreaking race against time to secure his future before the clock ran out completely. To understand the severity of this, you have to look at the Geezer Teaser Factory. That is the industry term for these films designed to trick you. They pay a legacy star like Bruce $1 million a day for 2 days of work. They slap his face on the poster, put his name at the top, but when you watch the movie, he's barely in it. Between 2020 and 2022 alone, Bruce Willis appeared in 22 of these films. That is an impossible schedule for a young actor, let alone a man in his late 60s. But on the sets of these movies, the truth was becoming impossible to hide. Stories began to leak out, whispers from crew members who were witnessing something deeply disturbing. Bruce wasn't just forgetting lines, he didn't know where he was. In one harrowing report from the set of Midnight in the he was observed looking around at the crew, completely bewildered. He allegedly turned to someone and asked, "I know why you're here, and I know why you're here, but why am I here?" This wasn't just a senior moment. This was a man whose reality was dissolving. And yet, the cameras kept rolling. The industry found ways to mask it. They built a system around his decline. It became an open secret in Hollywood that Bruce Willis could no longer memorize dialogue. It was physically impossible for his brain to retain the words, so they started using an earpiece. In almost every scene of his final 20 movies, Bruce is wearing a hidden device. A prompter would read the line into his ear, and Bruce would repeat it back, often in a flat, monotone voice, because he was focusing so hard on just getting the words out. When you go back and watch these movies now, it's haunting. You can see the delay. You can see the lack of emotion behind the eyes. He wasn't acting. He was echoing. Directors had to rewrite entire scripts on the fly. Monologues were chopped down to single sentences. Complex conversations were turned into nods and grunts. They shot him from behind so they could use body doubles for anything that required movement or complex interaction. They were literally propping up an icon, frame by frame, to get the footage in the can. But why? Why put a man in this condition through the grinder of film production? The answer is a mix of love, desperation, and arguably exploitation. There is a strong theory that Bruce Willis knew his time was limited. He knew the fog was rolling in, and that soon he would no longer be able to work at all. He knew his earning potential was about to hit zero, so he made a choice. Or his team made a choice for him. They decided to squeeze every last cent out of his name while they still could. He demanded huge fee, up to $2 million for 2 days of work. By churning out 22 movies in 3 years, he generated millions of dollars in liquid cash. At the same time, he began selling off his property portfolio. He sold his apartment in New York, his estate in Idaho, turning assets into cash. He was building a war chest. He was ensuring that when the lights finally went out, his wife, his 5 daughters, and his extended family would never have to worry about money. It was a father's final act of protection executed with a brutal, exhausting efficiency, but the danger was real. On the set of a movie called Hard Kill, things allegedly went from awkward to life-threatening. There are reports that during a scene involving firearms, Bruce didn't understand a safety cue. He allegedly fired a gun loaded with blanks at the wrong time. No one was hurt, thank God, but it shook the crew to their core. The line had been crossed. The action hero, who was once famous for doing his own stunts, for handling weapons with the grace of a soldier, was now a liability. And then came This was the moment the public humiliation peaked. The Gold Masbury Awards, which parodied the Oscars by honoring the worst films of the year, created a special category just for him. Worst performance by Bruce Willis in a 2021 movie. They mocked him globally. It was a joke to them. But days later, the family made the announcement that silenced the world. Bruce was stepping away. The diagnosis was aphasia. The Razzies immediately retracted the award and issued an apology. But the guilt was felt everywhere. We'd all be laughing at a man who was dying inside. But aphasia was just the beginning. A year later, the family released a second statement, and this one was final. It wasn't just aphasia. It was frontotemporal dementia, or FTD. If you don't know what FTD is, it is perhaps the cruelest form of dementia. Unlike Alzheimer's, which usually starts with memory loss, FTD attacks the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. These are the control centers for your personality, your behavior, your language, and your ability to plan. It doesn't just make you forget keys. It changes who you are. It strips away your empathy, your judgment, your ability to connect. For an actor whose entire life was built on communication, on charisma, on that spark in the eyes, this disease is a thief that takes everything. And this is where the story shifts from a Hollywood scandal to a family tragedy. Bruce Willis has always been surrounded by women. He has 3 adult daughters with DEMI, Scout, and Tallulah. And he has 2 young daughters with his wife, Emma, Heming, Willis, Mabel, and Evelyn. And, of course, there is DEMI herself. In the wake of this diagnosis, this blended family has formed a protective wall around him that is nothing short of Spartan. They don't live separate lives. They are a unit. Demi Moore is constantly at the house. They spend holidays together. They have created a bubble of love to shield him from the world. But inside that bubble, the pain is palpable. His daughter Tallulah gave an interview recently that broke hearts. She admitted that before they knew what was wrong, she thought her dad simply didn't like her anymore. She watched him have these 2 new young daughters with Emma, and she saw him becoming distant, quiet, unresponsive. She took it personally. She thought, he's lost interest in me. She tortured herself with the idea that she wasn't enough for him, to realize later that he wasn't ignoring her, but that his brain was literally failing to process the world. Carries a weight of guilt that is hard to imagine. She talked about saving his voicemails, archiving every photo, trying to build an archaeological record of the man before he disappears completely. And then there is Emma. Emma Heming Willis is the unsung hero of this saga. She calls herself a care partner, not a caregiver, but the burden she carries is immense. She is raising 2 little girls who are watching their father fade away, while simultaneously managing the care of a grown man who is an international icon. She has had to become a warrior. She's gone on social media to beg the paparazzi to back off. There was an incident where photographers were yelling at Bruce in the street, trying to get a reaction, trying to get him to say something. Emma had to explain that for someone with dementia, chaotic noise and shouting can be terrifying. It can trigger a shutdown. She is fighting the world to give him a moment of peace. But the update she gave this holiday season was the most telling of all. Speaking to E! News, she tried to stay positive. She said dementia is hard, but there is still joy in it. She talked about adapting traditions, about making new memories because the old ones can't be life goes on. She said, it just looks different. It sounds hopeful, doesn't it? But listen closer. What she is really saying is that the Bruce Willis of the past is gone. The conversations are gone. The quick wit is gone. The joy she speaks of is now found in simple presence, in holding hands, in a smile that might not have a reason behind it. They aren't waiting for a cure. There is no cure for FTD. They are simply trying to make the decline as comfortable as possible. This raises the uncomfortable question of legacy and exploitation. Looking back at those final years, did the industry fail him? His longtime agent, Stephen J. Eads, who was by his side for decades, collected massive commissions on those final 22 movies. Producers like Randall Emmett made millions selling these films to foreign markets, knowing full well that their star could barely function. There are reports that people on set raised red flags. They asked, "Is this okay? He looks sick." And they were told to mind their own business, that Bruce wanted to work, and maybe he did. Maybe he wanted to feel useful. Maybe he wanted to be on a set, the only place he had felt at home for 40 years. But there is a fine line between accommodating a legend and propping up a sick man for profit. The tragedy of Bruce Willis is not just that he is sick, it is that we watched it happen and didn't realize it. We mocked the symptoms of a dying brain. Now, the windows are closed. The cameras are off. The man who saved the world a dozen times on screen is now being saved by the women in his life. The update from this holiday season is likely the only kind we will get from now on. Protective and tinged with a deep, abiding sadness. The Bruce Willis we knew, the wisecracking detective, the stoic hero, has left the building. What remains is a man surrounded by love, fighting the longest, hardest, and most silent battle of his life. And this Chimi, there is no script, there is no director, and there is no way to rewrite the ending.